Well, as hard as it is to believe, we're now kicking off Season 8 today. Welcome. Yes, I know. It's very exciting, Timothy. Welcome to another episode of Swing Thoughts. A very, very special episode today. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks, and we'll tell you in a second in case you missed it. It's Coach Tim, O'ConnorGolf.ca, and, of course, Golf Spiritual Leader. Excited to start recording again every week. You know, the winter season is always a little bit, haphazard in terms of when we get together, but it's good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you too. Welcome back to the Great White North, otherwise known as Canada, after your Mexican sojourn. Did the cold slap you in the face?
It did.
Briskly?
I'll tell you, later when we're talking about the state of our games, I'll tell you, it's the longest I've ever spent working on my golf game in the winter, and I just kind of took for granted, how grateful I was to be able to do that. But also, as speaking of what you just said, I hadn't worn pants. It's funny. I realized on Saturday when I got on the plane from Mexico, I'm wearing pants for the first time since January.
Isn't that a throwback to COVID that none of us wore belts for a year?
No, exactly. Anyway, welcome everyone. We're excited to have you here back with us for the first week of the new season. As always, brought to you by TaylorMade Golf Canada and the new TaylorMade Stealth 2. Introducing the all-new TaylorMade Stealth 2, Stealth 2 Plus, and Stealth 2 HD carbon woods designed with more carbon, more forgiveness. That's right. Learn more at TaylorMadeGolf.ca. I picked up my new driver on Monday. I was in the lab with the guys at TaylorMade. That's pretty, we've talked about the elements of why Stealth is so good, but I tell you, you know what I said to the guy? I said, I'm not very technical. I just like the fact that it's shiny.
I just like the fact you got home probably Saturday near midnight, very first business day. You're probably at the door of TaylorMade Monday before they open. Hello, is anyone in there?
Oh yeah, it's funny. Like I saw my kids, which was a priority, and then I'm like, okay, good to see you guys. Daddy's got to go to TaylorMade. Also, our newest sponsor today, we want to make a mention. And we've kind of been hinting at this for a couple of weeks. Who is OscarBravo.com? Go and check out this brand of golf polos and golf attire. All we're going to tell you about it for the meantime, it's unlike any other golf stuff we've ever seen. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. And you'll be the only person at your club to be festooned in such sartorial splendor.
That is so well said. If you're looking to be festooned, who is OscarBravo.com is where we'd like you to go. And now, without further ado and delay, I said to this gentleman a few minutes ago, I said, there are very few people that have been on our show that literally need no introduction. And I think it's fair to say we've had a lot of very well-known golf people on this program over 8 years. But we'd be hard-pressed to find somebody more recognizable, not only in speech and in visage, but in knowledge and in impact on the world of golf over the last 40 years than our guest today. Please say hello. And the thing is, it's weird. He looks just like himself. Please say hello to David Ledbetter. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Howard. Pleasure to be here. And I like your music. I had a radio show on Sirius XM for a number of years, and Sultan of Swing was my introductory music piece. So
you are the Sultan of Swing.
Good taste of music there, guys.
Well, thanks.
See the influence you have.
It's hard to know, and one of the reasons David's here. We interviewed a gentleman a few months ago who liked our vibe, Andy Broomer, and happened to be talking to Mr. Ledbetter and said, hey, you're out promoting a training aid, which we're going to get to. These two knuckleheads from Canada do a different kind of golf show, and here you are. And there's so many places, Tim, I'm sure that you've thought about this, where to begin with, David. But I just want to say, in 40 years of following the game of golf, I meant when I said, Mr. Ledbetter, there are very few people that have had an influence on the world of instruction. Do you ever sit back and think about how that's transpired from the early days of being around the European tour to where you are now?
I do sometimes. I have to pinch myself, honestly, there, Howard, because it's really been an amazing journey, and I can't believe it. I'm actually into my 6th decade of actually teaching and coaching, because I started teaching when I was, believe it or not, 17 years old. I turned pro when I was very young, and I was an assistant pro. I was born in England, but I grew up in Southern Africa and Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia as it was then, and I became an assistant pro when I was 17, and I was teaching from day one. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, certainly, but it was a way I could make some money, because I wanted to play. And so, I gave lessons. I used to hustle for lessons, and so it was sort of, that was my, I suppose, in the early years, it really, I don't know, I really enjoyed it from day one. I really enjoyed trying to help people. So I suppose I had a calling in some ways. So I do think that, I mean, it's amazing the journey that I've gone through. And I wouldn't, people say, how would you change things? And I don't think I would. I mean, it's the game of golf has given me so much. I mean, obviously it's the other side of the coin. Would I've rather been a successful tour player? Well, probably. I mean, I think that was my initial goal. But having said that, I think I chose a branch of profession which really allowed me to, I don't know, I suppose in a way, I've always been a teacher in some form or shape. My grandfather was one of Britain's leading osteopaths, and he was blind, and so he had this knack or instinctive ability to sort of help people put his hands on them and actually feel things. So whether some of that rubbed off, I don't really know. It might have done. According to my mother, it did. But anyway, so yeah, it's incredible, really. When I think in terms of, I had no idea in setting out. I had no goal to be a great teacher. It was just something I love to do, trying to help people. And from there spawned all these other things, whether it be academies and books and training aids and, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we've somewhat created an industry. And so, I mean, it's very nice. People like Butch Harmon and what have you sort of say, hey, well, David sort of was a pioneer in this field. So in some ways, yeah, it's very, I'm very grateful for all of that and the things that have happened.
Well, Mr. Ledbetter, I want to ask.
Well, you better keep calling me David, okay? Because as a Mr. is like, hey, it's a little
well, it's just, I actually think it's a pretty interesting tradition in golf for those people that you really respect, Mr. Ulan and Mr. Palmer. So thank you for that invitation. David, what changed for you in terms of you personally as a coach and working with Nick Faldo, and what change do you think that made to, you mentioned earlier, kind of like the industry of the golf coach as almost like an industry?
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, it's no question. Look, I started working with some of my compadres, I suppose, Howard having just come back from Mexico. But anyway, people like Nick Price. I mean, Nick was has been a lifelong friend of mine. Dennis Watson, Mark McNulty. So you take all these people from Southern Africa who I grew up with and played with. They were sort of my early victims, if you will, and guinea pigs. And Nick Faldo, no question, changed my career, because it's like our association was well chronicled. I think that was the thing. I mean, because here was Nick Faldo who literally said, and throw the book at me. Let's start over here. I mean, he'd already sort of won the Order of Merit in Europe, and he won Hilton Head, I think, in 1984, because we started in 1985. And we sort of went to work, and not knowing really, I mean, okay, so, I mean, I was treading water to some extent, because here he sort of put his life, I suppose, to some extent in my hands. And so I had there's a lot of responsibility there. And it was the interesting thing Tim, was that we sort of planned on about a 2-year program. I mean, I think today with all the technology, et cetera, we might have shortcut that, but shorten the time period. But anyway, we figured about 2 years. Is look, let's just give ourselves a 2-year plan here. And it was interesting when he won his first major at Muirfield in 1987. It was like 2 years and a month. It was ironic. And so, and I think it was so well chronicled, even back then. Obviously today with social media, I mean, you'd know every second what somebody was doing. But then it was, even the newspapers, I mean, they were saying, well, what's happened to Nick Faldo? Who's this unknown coach that he's working with? He's ruining our boy and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was really, my name was sullied in a lot of, in most publications and newspapers and so on and so forth. And, it's funny how things turn as soon as he won, But, oh, well, look, obviously it was worth it. But it was a learning experience, not only for him, but certainly for me, I had the ideal student, somebody who was bound and determined and didn't let anything get in the way of his goal and his dream and his desires. And I mean, he really worked hard. I mean, all credit to him. And I say he couldn't have found a better student in reality, somebody who really just put their mind to it and, hey, went out and played, didn't play well, came back. We keep working on it. And so we had a goal as far as what we felt he had to do in his golf swing. I mean, essentially, in a few words, I mean, I remember when I first saw Nick. I actually first saw Nick when he was 18, believe it or not. That he was playing a tournament in, I think we're at Victoria Falls. There we go. There was a Victoria Falls Classic, and so it was part of the South African tour. And he was playing that as an 18-year-old. I think he just turned professional, and I mean, he had sort of the old style swing of the 60s, high hand, sort of reverse C finish, and so on and so forth. And but beautiful rhythm. I even remember that at that stage. And so, but prior to me working with him, I remember this was the days that coaches could actually walk inside the ropes at Augusta, walk the course he was playing. I think he was playing with Nick Price at the time, but in a practice round. And I remember how high he hit it and how little roll he had on it. It was amazing how much spinning imparted. And it was like the ball would, several times, I mean, the fairways were damp, if I remember, and it would pitch and almost come backwards. And so his major goal when we sat down was to win the Open. I mean, he really wanted to win the Open, and he felt that, look, he had to learn to flight the ball better and to control the ball in the wind. And so, with that sort of very sort of upright swing that he had and this sort of big, hang back and reverse C, I mean, he didn't flight the ball very well. So the things we worked on really was to sort of round his swing off to get more compact, to be able to use his body more in the swing rather than his hands and his arms. And it was amazing that he certainly drove the ball better after that. But the big thing is what he became a much better iron player. Because if you look at historically at all the greats, they've all been great iron players. Yeah. I mean, people who won at Augusta, I mean, virtually every one of them has been a great iron player, being able to control.
Well, certainly Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. But if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in because there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we love hearing your stories. But there's a few things I wanted to ask you about the nature of change. And there's two things quickly, if we can just get a couple of answers. When you first started with Nick Faldo, was it because it was all unknown in those days? And as you say, now maybe you could have truncated the time with technology, but it was a 2-year plan. And that must have been a bit scary for you because you were a contemporary-ish of those guys, Price, Watson, Faldo. And here's this guy who's already had some success, who's putting himself in your hands. So that's part one. Was that ever in those, were you a bit nervous, like, what if I screw this up? And secondly, what does that say to well, maybe we can talk about this after, because I do want to explore this idea with you, which I find fascinating, and a lot of golfers do, the nature of change in golf. Because Nick Price took 2 years. It was his full-time job to get better at golf, and it took that long to make a change. The average person hears that and goes, well, I heard Ledbetter said something. I'm going to go try it out this weekend. So let's talk about first just as a guy, a young man at the time thinking, what if I screw this up?
The funny thing is, honestly, Howard, I didn't have any thoughts in that direction whatsoever. I just, a few years ago, people asked me, well, how do you figure out what you're going to work on with a player? Where do you start? I mean, obviously you can look at the basics and grip, posture, swing plane, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, and I think this is, I'm a very visual person. I actually create a picture in my mind of how I think this particular individual should swing the club. And that's the model I work towards. So when I first saw Nick, I said, and this was the time, I mean, you got to remember that people give me all the credit for working, with a great player and helping him to, becoming a great player. And, but prior to that, Hank Haney sort of started working quite a bit with Mark O'Meara. And so, who made some really good changes with Mark. And so, pretty much on the same lines, actually. Yeah, Mark had a very upright swing when he was younger and so on, and Hank sort of rounded him off. So, and in fact, Nick used to, he spoke to Mark O'Meara about it and about what his changes that he was working on, etc. So, he came in with eyes wide open, and he said, look, I know there's going to be a certain amount of trial and error, and so we're really, this is going to be a team effort, and it really was. So I didn't have any misgivings about the fact that we wouldn't get to where we want to get to. I just didn't, we just threw this 2-year number out, and it just happened to be that. But there was progress along the way, but he was such a perfectionist. He wouldn't allow himself to actually play well in the interim. It's like he was taking his practice tee thoughts, his technical thoughts, if you will, onto the golf course, which, as we know, is not ideal. Mm-hmm. And so, but he was so bound and determined, okay, I'm going to get this. It wasn't as if he said, okay, I'm going to work on this, go and play for 3 weeks, forget about it, and then come back, which is what most players would do. No, Nick would say, no, okay, I'm going to work at this. I'm going to do my drills. We were known for the drills that we worked on. I mean, probably most of the drills that I've come up with over the years, I mean, probably Nick Faldo probably tried them or worked with them. And I mean, you can see some of his sort of stuff that he does these days, are sort of the drills that we used to work on together. So no, I mean, I was very confident, and he was very confident, and that's really, the energy between us was pretty amazing. And so he had no misgivings whatsoever. He completely trusted what I was saying, and I just was very confident in what we were doing and the stages that we went through in order to get to the point where he got to.
So about the nature of change that Howard was talking about, this too really fascinates me. And most golfers, I would suggest, are like, how come I can't change? I right. try this, and things don't seem to work. So in terms of your work with Nick Faldo, was it a matter of things like he was able to just put results out of his mind, process, delay gratification? Did you have a process of where you, in essence, held him accountable? I'm just interested in that process of change.
Yeah, well, it was a combination of things, Tim, and yes to all those little questions that you have there. But essentially, I think that the thing is, I mean, you have to put the responsibility on the player. I mean, look, the coach can only do so much. You can't hit the ball for them, and it is a case of obviously helping to build somebody's belief system up, which we were constantly doing. And so, and you saw, there were little bits of lights at the end of the tunnel, even during the early stages. So it wasn't as if it was all bad at all. It was, there were some good times, some periods where even after a few weeks, months, that we started to see some progress. And, that was the time really, I was a big advocate of video at the time. I mean, because I was one of the first coaches really I remember one time I was out at a tournament and I had, one of those old VHS cameras, those big clunking things, like, it's sort of like,
like the size of a smart. You're walking around with something the size of a smart car. It's like,
yeah, exactly, and so I remember I was at a tournament. I think, and this was sort of just maybe, probably mid '80s, probably. So I certainly, it was just after I started working with Nick, I think. But I remember I was at a tournament, and it was crazy because I must have had, not that I worked with all of them, but I probably saw 15 tour players that week who never actually seen their swings before on video. It was crazy. It's like, and you think now, not only we're talking about video, we're talking about launch monitors and force plates, etc., etc. And so, it was really, it was eye-opening, and the fact that he's a very visual type player too. So video really helped him, and I've always been an instruction buff, if you will, and I had photographs of different players and scrapbooks of players and so on and so forth. And so we sort of looked at all this and made comparisons. And so it was sort of a combination of things that and that allowed us to get to where we got to. Some of it we muddled through. Some of it was, as I say, trial and error, as I mentioned. But it was, it was a real lesson for me in learning to be patient and maybe taking one step forward, half a step backwards, and that sort of thing. And
David, let me just jump in let me come in on that word patience, because I'm going to tell you a quick story. And I've told this story on the air a few times about my older brother, who is an avid player, late 60s, early 70s, shoots, 14 handicap. A couple years ago, he called me and said he was disgusted with his game. He goes, "I've got to completely overhaul my swing." And I said to him, "Are you going to be moving into Ledbetter's basement?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because unless you're moving in with David Ledbetter, like go live at his house for a year, you're not overhauling anything." And I bring that up because I know he'll find this amusing that we're actually talking to you now. But I've used you as a reference when I've talked to people about, well, they want to change something in their swing. And I go, so let me just say this to you, now that you're here. What is realistic? Because we're not all Nick Faldo, and we don't have you standing on the range with us for 2 years and a month. As a guy that is a leader in instruction, academies and training aids and books, what do you say to the average person? What's realistic for them?
Okay, so here's the thing. I have a theory that, and it seems to have worked out over the years, that when you get to sort of mid to late 20s, you've sort of formed a DNA for your technique. We were at the very edge with Nick Faldo, because I think he was 28 when we started. So you see players in their 30s and their 40s, and they're trying to make big swing changes. Maybe it can work on the range, maybe it can work at times, but you get under the gun, and guess what? Old habits reappear. And so, to answer your question there, Howard, it's I think that, look, one has to be very, very careful. Look, there are certain basics, I think, that you can follow. If you look at golf swings, they are like fingerprints. They're all very, very different. There are what is the commonality with all these great players? Players have tried to swing like, Tiger, for instance. It was just, I think, happenstance that Adam Scott used to look a little bit like Tiger. Obviously he probably had a vision in his mind of Tiger, and the fact they were working with Butch, it was sort of I think, pure coincidence, though, because you just don't see it. You don't say, well, look, this guy's Joe Blow. His swing is exactly the same as Sam Burke's. It just doesn't happen. The mannerisms, we're all different with the way we're built, the way we think. It's incredible that, yes, there are certain fundamentals, but even if you work on certain fundamentals, posture, etc. The player still looks different. So, I think amateur golfers have to be very careful about, especially today, look, there's so much information out there. Look, you can go on YouTube, and I think there's about 7 million pieces of advice on the golf swing, right?
So that
I think you're underestimating.
I was going to say that was 7 million that was uploaded during your interview.
Yeah, so and unfortunately, you see some people standing on the tee trying to think of all 7 million pieces at once. So, but I think it's I think it's absolutely desirable maybe to sort of improve and work on things, but I do think you need to have somebody overseeing it. Find a good teacher, find a good PGA professional in your area who can help to devise a plan for you, because there's a lot of factors that go into it. How much time do you have to play in practice? What are your goals? What's your physical ability like? What's your talent level like? All this has to be sort of thrown into the mix, and then you come out with a plan for this individual, right? We can't sort of tar everybody with the same brush. And that's why, look, I've written 9 books now or something. And that probably maybe 25% of the readers are going to get something out of it, because people interpret things differently. The old thing, there's a big difference between feel and real, right? So it's a tricky thing. But if you want to get a plan, look, there's certain things that amateurs can do to get better. Look, as you get older, hey, try to do some sort of flexibility exercises to keep your motion going. Okay, maybe lose a little bit of weight so you keep your energy levels up through the round. Hey, get a good solid setup position there with a good grip. Do some things. Maybe find a couple of drills that that have worked in the past, that if your coach has given them to you, you work on those on a regular basis. People tend to sort of, hey, well, let's try this, let's try that. Look, we're all guilty as people in the business, writing and what have you. I as I say, I always say, well, am I bringing anything out new? Well, probably not. The wrapping may be a little bit different, but really the presence exactly the same. And so, and I have to say that probably, I wrote my first golf book I wrote was called The Golf Swing back in 1989. Okay, and I had, in fact,
by the way, both of us have it. Book. We both have
it. In fact, I was just on before we started chatting here. I was just on the line to David Frost, who was the model in that book.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He still looks at some of those pictures and thoughts, and still, that's what he does. He's on the Champions Tour. He's in his 60s now. So, I have to. The one thing I have to say when people say, "Well, listen, have you changed your philosophy over the years?" I wouldn't say I've changed it. It's evolved.
Mm-hmm.
I've got into sort of studying a lot more about biomechanics. A great friend of mine, his name is J.J. Rivet, one of the world's leading biomechanists, who's an associate to the European Tour and does all this sort of screening and testing. And it's amazing, what you find out now with the biomechanics aspect of the game. It's almost like it's the internal workings that you find out about, rather than just purely the outside cosmetic stuff. So it's the old thing. It's like, well, it's form over function type thing,
And Dave, I'm going to jump. That's where I'm going to jump right in. So you talked about social media and how we're bombarded with all this information. So, and it's a lot of the things that we see in social media. It's pretty. We get sucked in, shall we say? What do you think about the whole idea of someone trying to swing according to a model? There was stack and tilt. There was the X factor. There's the single plane swing, or people try to swing like, say, Rory McIlroy or Lydia Ko. What do you think about that whole thing around trying to swing like someone or adhere to a model versus perhaps owning your own swing?
Yeah, I just don't think it works. It really doesn't. And so I think that as a teacher, I have all these ideas. Look, I'll take things from a stack and tilt, which there's some good stuff in it. There's some good stuff in all of it, but it doesn't mean that it's good for everybody. Look, your own late great Mo Norman. They try to bring out a method based on him, whatever, natural golf, whatever it was called, and so
single plane swing.
Yeah, exactly. But thick grips and no wrist set and so on and so forth. And so it worked for Mo, obviously, but I mean, the guy hit 3,000 balls a day, and and so,
That's right.
I mean, I used to watch him practice a lot, back in the day when he was down in Florida, and so, but I mean, it's sort of an, golf swing's very, very individual, isn't it, when you look at it, and so we're all going to swing differently. And I think, in the end, it's like, look, how does that player get the club face on the ball in a consistent fashion? And so that's ultimately what you're working to as a coach, as a teacher. That's what you're working towards.
We've been talking a lot about, as you can tell, the nature of change. When we started the show 8 years ago, our interest was, we thought to be a bit different, we would talk primarily with people about the mental side of the game. And lately we've had a lot of conversations like this about, form and change and evolution of a golfer. And one of the things that you sort of introduced famously, but it's exploded, is the idea of training aids. A very good friend of ours, Martin Chuck from Tour Striker. We know Sean Foley well, and you're no different. You've got a bunch of items that potentially can help a golfer in their desire to make small fundamental changes. And I was watching the product you have now is called the Straightaway. And one of the things I loved about watching the video this morning is you're not telling somebody you need to change your golf swing to look like Rory. You're saying there's a fundamental in the golf swing. In the first couple of feet of this motion, there's some absolutes. Now, you can do whatever you want physically and how you look, but talk a little bit about the Straightaway and why you think that first move off the ball is so important.
Well, I think, it's interesting. I mean, I've always sort of looked at sort of the start of the swing, including, grip and posture are really important because that affects the first movement. I mean, so assuming somebody has a fairly decent grip and a fairly decent posture, and maybe they're aiming okay. But, apart from that, I think the common denominator, if you look at virtually every player, now there are a couple of exceptions, I have to say, but if you look at virtually every player, they have a distinct look where as they move the club back, the hands stay in and the club head is out. Okay. And to me, it's a very difficult move. It's always been a very difficult move for me to not to understand, but to actually get it through to a student. Hey, this is what is supposed to happen. It's interesting. If you hold the club out in front of you, if you're holding almost like a baseball bat plane, if you move it back, it's like, the triangle moves together, and if you stop it, maybe after you've moved the butt of the club, maybe a foot, you have a look at it, the club head is outside the hand. But, I think, the big thing, especially when you look at amateurs, is that, I don't like the term takeaway, although I use it now more than I have done. I've always used the term move away, because to me, there's always has to be a connection. The two most important ingredients in a swing, obviously, are the motion of the body and the motion of the hands and the arms, and how you tie those two together in a synchronized fashion. And to me, if you look at, the interesting thing is when you look at players today, it's interesting how look how many of them work on what I call the modern waggle. Okay, whereby you look at them all. It's you look
Justin
from
Thomas,
Justin Thomas. Yeah. They're all at it. And
Mike Weir was doing that when he
was doing it for years.
Yeah, exactly. We used to work a lot with Mike, and Mike did that. That was part of his routine, and it's interesting now. You don't see too many players with the old sort of flippy wristed sort of waggles. Yeah, exactly. You don't, and maybe Jason Duffner, he still does it, I think. But But even the Hogan, even the Nexus waggle. It was all about, okay, we'll get the tension out of there. Well, yeah, that's one part of it. But it's interesting how, what is the point of working on things in your swing if the start is incorrect? Because you're going to be compensating, right? It's as simple as that. And we know, hey, I would say, I'm going to say point blank. I say when Rory gets in trouble with his swing, we all say, hey, well, he gets the club stuck behind him and underneath and what have you. But that's the effect. If you look at, it's interesting when he makes, he's done a little TikTok thing about, hey, I always like to keep the club in front of me. I don't want to get the club behind me. Well, the problem is if you shove it out going back, you think in terms of, I use this as an example because to me, synchronizing a swing is probably the most important ingredient in the swing. And it's not talked about that much. People say, oh, well, he's out of rhythm, or his timing's off or something. And so they generalize. But if you think about it, if you're going to fly from New York to Toronto, you sure as hell wouldn't go through LA to get there. Okay, you wouldn't so you're going on a real roundabout.
Unless you have a really bad
there, right?
Travel agent, you wouldn't, David.
Exactly. But so my point being is that, the more efficient you can make your backswing from a standpoint of the head, the hands moving on a simple track, the more chance you've got of synchronizing your arms and your body. Because you've got to remember your body sort of turns or rotates, coils, however you want to term it, to a certain extent, almost in a similar fashion every time. But now the distance that, if you look at amateurs who sort of whip the club behind them, they then lift it up, they then, it's like so many faults you can actually trace back to the takeaway, to the start. And so this little device that we've come up with, because I'm really excited about it, because to me, in all our testing, we've done it with lots of different players, from seniors to men, women, juniors. Juniors, for instance, have a lot of times tend to have bad takeaways because they're using clubs that are too long and too heavy for them. So they're just struggling to get the club back. And so, yeah, you do get the odd guy like a John Daly who sort of, his is an exception. And you could go back to Raymond Floyd, or you could go back to Nancy Lopez. You could even go back to Lee Trevino, who sort of worked the club away almost with their hands. But it's interesting, they managed to sync up in a different way. So synchronizing, to me, where you can synchronize the arm swing with the body rotation is what it's all about. And the big thing with training aids, and I brought out a few, and some have done really well over the period, and I think this one's the best of all, because what it does, guys, it gives you a feel for what you want to do. As a coach, we're trying to implant and discuss more a feeling that somebody can utilize rather than sort of a list of thoughts. Okay, there's a big difference between thought and feel, right? I mean, so this, if you can work on something, and to me, a lot of people don't have much time to work on stuff. So this straightaway is where you can actually make practice swings at home. You can hit balls with it, and it works. It works just as well with pitching and chipping as it does with a full swing. So what it does, it guarantees you make a perfect stop. We call it the tour takeaway. And so this little gad, I don't know if we can see it on here, but there it is. It fits on here. It clips onto your club just beneath the grip, and it looks like almost like a little fire engine or something.
That's very cute. By the way, just in our final couple of minutes, it's called the straightaway. And when is this going to be available for people? You can go look it up online right now, but when will people able to get it?
Probably about hopefully in the next sort of 3 weeks or so. Okay. So we wanted it out for the Masters. Obviously, the Masters, maybe apart from Canada, is really the start of the golf season, right? So for most people.
No. Listen, David. Where we are in Toronto, there were golf courses open as of yesterday.
Oh wow, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So it's called the straightaway, and it's just to describe it. It fits on your club, and it comes with some alignment. It basically just shows you the first couple of feet of your swing. It gives
if you're right, if you're wrong. You have an alignment stick on your toe line. You work it back. You check it out. It literally only have to move the butt of the club a foot, and you will see exactly where you should be, and you just rehearse that move. In fact, obviously we've got academies all over the world, and part of our training program now is like, hey, try to develop the modern waggle with amateurs, because if they can get that start where their arms are relaxed and they can move the club away correctly and know they're doing it right, that's the key. Because the problem is, you work on it with a player, and then, hey, before you know it, the next time they come, they've either overdone it or they haven't done it enough or what have you. So this is pretty much sort of it gives you the perfect tour takeaway. And so, and anybody can do it. That's the key, guys. It's like, you don't have to be athletically, inclined. You don't have to be a wonderfully talented golfer. You don't have to be that strong, any age. And everybody can get off to a good start. If you get off to a good start, I mean, I wrote an article years ago that most people should start the swing from halfway back, because most of the problems on the golf swing happen in the first, meter or 3 feet.
That was the A swing.
What's that?
That was the A swing.
Yeah, the A swing was sort of an exaggerated version of what one of my favorite swingers of all time was Calvin Peete. And if you look at that Calvin Peete, I mean, he's the epitome of the A swing. And we're talking about steepening the backswing and shallowing the downswing. And let's face it, Jim Furyk probably is a really good role model for a lot of amateurs out there who want to shallow the club coming down in order to hit a draw and get rid of that cursed slice.
David, I wanted to ask before we let you go. You talked about a good start. So yeah, as Howard said, it's the start of the golf season in Canada and certainly northern United States as well. You talked about syncing up, and you also talked a few minutes ago about feel versus thinking. So as the golf season starts, perhaps it's with your training device or just on their own. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest to golfers is what they take to the golf course? Is it perhaps focusing on that feeling of the sequence versus, say, having a list of swing thoughts?
Well, I think, look, ideally, hey, you don't have a swing check, right? You go and work with your teacher or a teacher of note, and hey, let's do some basic stuff here. Let's check. Jack Nicklaus used to do this with Jack Graf at the start of every golf season. Yeah. He said, okay, think of me as a beginner. Okay, let's go through the grip, go through the posture, go through the alignment, go through the ball position, go through my rotation, my hip release, and so on. So he would sort of go through it. And so I think, doing a couple little drills, just some pivot drills with a club behind your back, between your elbows, working on that sort of loading into your right side if you're a right-handed golfer. I know a lot of lefties in Canada, so into your left side. As you're going back, your trail leg, as people like to call it now. Okay, work into your trail leg. Get some pressure moving down into your lead foot. I have to think trail and lead.
Inclusive language. I know you're trying hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of woke golf language in my terminology. But yeah, in fact, I'm just finishing another book right now, which is I wrote a book years ago called Faults and Fixes, and this one's called You Fix It. And
by the way, got that book too, sir. Just so you know.
Well, this is a very quick story. So, the writer Ron Kaspersky from Golf Digest, the first sort of copy that he sent me, and everything was trail and lead. And I said, Ron, I said, look, it's like I have to think about what's the trail, what's the lead. I said, what you're going to do? We're going to write a paragraph. Listen, I'm sorry for all you lefties there, but this is what you're going to do is just swap it around, okay? We're talking the right hand there, so when we say right, you say left. So I said, no, I can't handle this woke.
But you were saying you're writing a book now.
Yeah,
and finishing a book now.
Yeah, it's a basic self-help book, and that's what I think. It's one of those things where it's got 72 faults, and it's like a faults and fix type thing. It's sort of a modernized version of one I brought out, 20 years ago. And so this, and as with the straightaway, it's a self-help tool. I mean, so that's nice when you go out and practice. You're actually practicing with a purpose. What you're actually trying to do.
Okay, Mr. Ledbetter, I know you don't want to be, but I do believe that someone like you, we have to give a little respect to. Ledbettergolf.com, or where do we get the straightaway? Can you start
straightawaygolf.com? They can go to the
website.
Yeah, the landing page is just about to be put on. It's really new. I'm really excited about it because and the great thing, it works for lefties as well. So
okay,
flip it around so you don't have to worry about having to buy a separate
and you
one.
were kind enough. I know a few weeks ago your PR person said you're going to send it to us, and once
we will. I'll send you guys a couple, and if you want to give them away to your listeners,
I was going to say we'd love that.
The contest, we'd love to do that.
Could you autograph it with a Sharpie or something?
Could you do that?
Absolutely, sure.
David, and we ask. I know that you're not. We would. I know you're busy, and you're David Ledbetter. But if from time to time, if we sent you a note and said, "Hey, David, would you come back on the show? Could we have you back?" I know we're putting you on the spot because you can say yes now and then say F those guys, but we would love to have you back.
No, I'd love to do it. I'm still very British in many ways, and I really enjoy coming up to Canada because I call Canadians mild Americans. So it's really I really enjoy working with Canadians.
That's not what we call ourselves. We call ourselves smart Americans.
Oh, okay.
We're not polite. We're just passive aggressive. Yeah. That's all.
Right.
So straightaway.com,
straightaway.golf.com.
Straightaway.golf.com. I just want to thank you very much. I know Tim's going to say the same thing, but it was really exciting to have you on the show, and we really appreciate your stories. And I know my brother's going to ask me, but just in case, is there a price that if he moves into your basement, is there a cost of instruction? The Ledbetter basement plan?
Yeah. It'd have to be the garage, unfortunately. We don't have a basement here in Florida. So.
All right. Well, listen, sir, thank you very much. Tim, any final words for...
No, it's been, quite frank, it's been a real honor. I remember I actually spoke with you at Oakmont about Mo Norman back when I was writing his book, and you were very kind to help me out with your interpretation of his swing. I remember watching you work with Seve at your academy.
Yeah, exactly. That was the year I was working with Seve. That was a great year. Enjoyed it,
David. Thank you very much.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. We'll and yes, I hope that we get to get to talk to you again.
Yeah. Anytime, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. StraightawayGolf.com, and we'll look forward to giving those away. That was very kind of you. David Ledbetter, thank you very much. Look at that. That's David Ledbetter. Now when people say to us, who have you had on the show? We'll say, well, we had Ledbetter on. What else do you want from us? Do you recognize this song?
Absolutely.
I was thinking.
The name of the band, because I'm good. My next birthday is 66. Of course, I can't remember the name.
Pearl Jam, and the song is called Yellow Ledbetter.
Ooh, yes.
Okay, now that he's gone, can I just say something?
Singer, right?
How fucking cool was that?
Very
seriously. Like, I just kept looking at him, thinking to myself, because, I didn't want to get into it because I just wanted him to talk, but
yeah,
I have that book, The Golf Swing, and before I read Rotella's book 5 years later in 1995, I was, I'm sure I could find it somewhere. I was enamored with that book, The Golf Swing, and Nick Faldo at the time was one of my favorite golfers, and we didn't even get into the fact that, David worked with Greg Norman and Nick Price and all these people. Yeah. But I remember being enamored with the idea that Nick Faldo, as chronicled in that book, went through all those changes.
That's right.
And all those positions, a little bit of that instruction kind of seeped into a little bit of Evershed stuff where he did the thing where you start with your hands, you cock your wrists and then take the club back. That was a big Faldo drill all the time. And then when you brought up faults and fixes, I forgot I have that one too.
Exactly. Well, I'm a huge book nerd, and it's not just the text, but it's the look of the book. One of my favorite books I had when a kid was Jack Nicklaus Lesson T, and it was like it was kind of like cartoons. I mean, it really
like animation, right? Or animated, right?
But it was the same with the Golf Swing book with the model of David Frost. It was done in this kind of lovely colors animation. I just remember
it was a glossy book.
Oh, I just loved looking at it. It was just an attractive book, and obviously it was huge. But man, what a privilege to have Mr. Ledbetter on our show and to hear about, how he started to talk about the process with working with Nick Faldo. That was fascinating stuff.
And think about what he said. I mean, here we have a guy, along with Rick Smith, Jimmy Ballard, Jim McLean, Hank Haney, Butch Harmon. All of those guys sort of came on the scene around the late 80s. Jimmy Ballard famously worked with Curtis Strange, who won back-to-back U.S. Opens in the late 80s. And then, of course, Butch Harmon, burst onto the scene with Greg Norman and then Tiger Woods. But think about what this guy started, and then think about what he said about, and I'm so glad he did that. He brought up that Nicklaus thing. And I brought that up before. In Golf My Way, the Jack Nicklaus book, he famously said, and maybe we've even talked about this recently, 90% of everything you do in your golf swing happens before you take the club back. And here was David Ledbetter, the guru of all, saying, just check your grip, check your posture, check your ball position and your aim. Because if you don't have that in somewhat organized fashion, you don't have a chance. All the other stuff you see online starts with, do you have some of those basics down?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is that he gets unfairly tagged as yet another one of those mechanics gurus who's having you chase after, moving body parts, shall we say. And just as you said, you take care of your fundamentals. And he said, on our program, you don't go to the golf course with all kinds of thoughts, and it's more feel than thinking thoughts. And that's why I think that I was really intrigued by his new training device, the straightaway, because it's all about feel. There's no thinking about how you're supposed to do something. You just kind of watch and observe, which I think is huge.
So I was going to ask you as a coach, I have an answer to this, but I'm just curious what yours is. Why are we, because we're no different than anyone else, why is it so attractive to see something on, TikTok or YouTube or social media, and you see this teacher and you see this move, and what is it about human beings? Why do we find that so sort of intoxicating?
You hit it. Dopamine.
Yeah.
Dopamine. We see it and you get that spritz like, oh, this is it. This is it. It goes right back to when we talked to Judson Brewer, the famous mindfulness psychiatrist. And he said, back when we were like knuckle dragging mouth breathers, some of us are still like that.
I was going to say last week.
Yeah, exactly. But when we found food, whoa, excitement, dopamine. Same with, you get an amazing sugar donut if you prefer, dopamine. And the same for a golfer. When we see something that looks like, oh my God, the secret, or this is going to fix my slice or whatever, it just hits us as like, oh, this is it. And so it's so tempting, seductive, addictive to go down that rabbit hole and into it. And unfortunately, like so many other things, we find that, oh, wait a sec, this isn't the secret.
Yeah. Well, I'm intrigued by your answer, and I agree with it. What I would also say is, and working on the basics of your golf swing is pretty boring. It's just 100%. Not very, there isn't a lot of dopamine in standing there in a mirror or watching your swing on video for how you set up and how your posture is. And back to, the fact that we're going to get these little training devices aside, but watching the video today, I thought, okay, there's a way to check that first couple of feet of your swing, which isn't very sexy to work on. No. You'd rather talk about, whatever is the Rory move or the Morikawa move, but to the average player who does what he says, which is suck it back inside. And as soon as you do that, even my buddy Henrik has said that to me. Sometimes when I get into trouble, I just start off too quickly. And he's been telling me this for 6.5 years. If I could just make the first couple of feet of my swing a little slower, what that would prevent me from doing is pulling it inside my right leg.
You told me that.
I've told you that. Here's the thing. It's a fault of a lot of players, good and, intermediate. But this thing that he's invented, and it's funny on the video, both of us saw today, we saw this video of Ledbetter talking about it. He said, I'm just sorry I didn't think of this earlier.
Exactly.
Because it's such a basic, fundamental move.
Yeah, but it was interesting how you kind of leapt on it when Mr. Ledbetter said about patience.
Yes.
Because working on your fundamentals, it's not sexy. People wanted to go to the driving range, hit drivers, and have fun with that. But if you aspire to becoming a low-digit player or just taking your game to another level, you've got to take care of those little things, those foundational pieces, like he said, setup, posture, ball position, alignment, all of that. And I would say that I like the way he said the move away.
Yes.
Which is the same. And people may say, well, that's just language. To me, it's the same way. Like Harvey Pinnock would never say you choke down on a golf club. We don't want the word choke in there. So we grip down on it. Yeah. So it's the same with the move away. It's just I don't know. It's just, I think, a very it's an easy and fundamental, shall we say, approach to your game.
And I thought it was cool that, and by the way, I did that. Just, I don't know if you noticed when I snuck that in, that your PR company was going to send us a couple of things, because I was trying to make sure. I was trying to make sure that we get it. I'm sorry.
Well, you are a veteran broadcaster.
Right. It's that old pro thing. If it's free, take 3. But I also think it's cool that he's going to give us some for us to give away, because I think it really will benefit our STDs, and I would love that. And by the way, speaking of giving away, we're going to have some Oscar Bravo stuff to give away. We're going to have some tailor-made stuff again to give away. We're going to set this up for everyone so that you can sort of share in the benefits that we get from being associated with these people. But I just want to go back to something that we were talking about on last week's show, and we mentioned it to each other before the show started today. We've had some good feedback on last week.
Mm-hmm.
And where I sort of shared the idea of been working on my swing for 3 months, not 2 years and a month, but 3 months, and ended up discovering that, the real secret was in sort of the basics, in improving some of those fundamentals and working on my posture. And then after the show was over last week, I sent you that video of my swing.
Yep.
It was interesting what you said, because even before you hit play, you could see there was a different look to what I was doing.
100%.
And that is a achievable goal for everybody. I had more time than most people because I was away and I was in the sun. But what I learned through trial and error is that if you don't set up, and I've really changed my setup, I'm definitely more in a athletic, ready posture. I thought I was before, but not like I look now. That fundamental, foundational feeling, not to be too illiterate, is it makes you feel like you're going to hit it, that you just look like you're ready to hit the ball. And it is something everyone can do. Like, absolutely. That's not hard to do. It's boring as shit. I'll give you that. It's really tedious to try and remind yourself to do it every time. But I think it's also beneficial.
Well, we talked about integration, and that's what happens when you start to do the same things over and over again. They start to become who you are rather than having to think about it. And that is different. That becomes first reference to Fred Shoemaker today, excuse me, is a direct experience. It's not something you're thinking about. It's not a concept. It's not something I have to remember. It's a direct experience that you feel. And when you can start incorporating and adding more layers of experience, particularly on fundamentals, you start to own them. Oh, hello, Stan. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yes. Well, I apologize. It's thundering here. We're in a bit of a thunderstorm here, and he's freaking out. Like, he's just shaking.
I totally get it.
He does this thing. I know Freddie does this, your dog, not Freddie, my partner. He starts to shake, and then he gets dandruff. Like, he starts to shed, like his skin sheds. It's really weird.
Yeah, Freddie, the other night, Freddie was the same thing. He's like, whoa, what's going on here? I'm not liking this.
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't cut you off in something.
No, I just to me, and just one of the key things that came out of our discussion last week, which, yeah, you're right, it resonated with a whole bunch of people, was that it wasn't that you were chasing after some, idea of what, to go back to our conversation with Mr. Ledbetter about perfection or a model or something that you needed to aspire to. You were working on your fundamentals, you were working on that, but it was your own experience. It was what you were having. And to me, that is the greatest way that anyone learns. It's like there's like we said earlier, there's no model swing. There's only your swing.
Well, and what he said too, that I really resonated with me, is that, by the time you're in your late 20s,
oh yeah,
your golf swing DNA is pretty much set. And I kind of wish we could have not challenged him on it, but interesting coming from a guy that spent the last 40 years, trying to get people of all ages to change some parts of their swing to make them better. But I think, he would answer by saying, well, yeah, but I'm not saying to overhaul your whole swing. I'm saying don't whip it inside right away.
That's right.
Have a good grip,
Yep.
In that book, The Golf Swing with Nick Faldo and David Frost, like a lot of those things, you look at how he sets him up, and yeah, he took a guy and for 2 years and a month watched him hit balls. Like, not everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting what he was saying about, your DNA. I mean, and that's the frustrating part for adults to learn golf.
Yes.
Because when you're a kid, it's like my son Corey started playing about 10 or 11. So I played with him last year. It was his first round of golf. I mean, he just looked amazing. He's got this athletic, fluid swing, bombs it out there. He's 29. He's almost 29 now.
Yeah.
But as adults, it's harder. And also what David spoke to some degree is the plateau that golfers hit. I mean, a lot of golfers get into the game. They get maybe introduced to it, men and women. So they get into golf, start to take some lessons, and they make rapid improvement. After about the third year, you just plateau. And it's how do you take that forward? And I think you can take your game forward. You may not change, as David said, the DNA of your swing, but I think the way your awareness of, say, target,
Mm-hmm.
moving in a more instinctual way, those types of things. And so I think that his straightaway device works nicely with that.
Well, and another thing he said too, and I love this part, was when he was talking about, you might be able to, change your swing against a model on the range. You might even take it to the course once in a while. But as soon as you're under any kind of pressure, your old swing is going to show up. You're
100%, absolutely.
And as I said to you last week, for a solid month, every other day, pretty much, I taped my golf swing. So I was very familiar with what I mean. Sometimes you look at it, you just want to puke, but I was very familiar with the motion of it. And then I took 4 weeks off of taping it, and then I taped it and I sent it to you. I've watched that swing, the last one, a bunch of times. It doesn't look way different than the first one I did on January 29th, but the setup looks different. The actual motion, how far I take it back, the way I bring it too far inside, all sorts of stuff. They're still the same. But I did affect some change in how I stood over the ball, how I stand over the ball. And that's really as far as what you can affect before the golf season, there's not much more. Certainly now, there's not much time left to make a lot of changes before you start playing golf in a few weeks out here. But you can work on those things. And it's funny how we've come full circle on this show, because we've been talking about nothing but swinging a golf club today, but from a sort of, I don't know, more of an organic, holistic approach versus P6, you need to be here. Because I think that's impossible. And believe me, Timmy, you and I both know this. We've tried.
Of course we have.
We've tried. P6? Should I be here at P6? How you?
No. You're too inside.
That's right. Is P7 coming? So, anyway.
I ordered it FedEx. It should be here.
I was going to say, speaking of which, we're both in our 60s, so somebody's going to have to pee soon. So there you go. Very first show. I just checked. This is episode 224.
Ooh.
That's a lot of episodes. And really excited that we got a chance to get him on. And in the
we didn't even talk about the Masters.
Well, I know I was going to say in the coming weeks, we've got Zokel. Sasho McKenzie's going to be on the show. I'm having Dameron on Humble and Fred show, but he's back on the 19th here.
Yep.
So funny. I didn't know you booked him, because I sent him a note today saying, "Hey, Freddie and I want to talk to you tomorrow about golf," and he's like, "Sure." Because I thought I was wrong. I kind of made a mistake. I thought he got to play in the Masters, but when he won his PGA Tour tournament, it wasn't one of the tournaments that were designated as an invitee.
Sadly. Yeah. Hey, real quick.
Yeah.
You know who I think would be a cool dark horse pick this week, if you haven't already got him? Corey Connors. Come on.
I agree.
This guy is, and I love what Zinger said.
Oh, yeah.
When he hit his final drive, he could hit it through a donut hole. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, it was great. I watched all of that tournament. I saw him. It was around. He never made a bogey.
No.
We're talking about Corey Connors, not Azinger. Yep. And never missed a shot. Hit it where he was supposed to pretty much the entire round, and had some pressure on him on the end. But Freddie was doing one of our sponsors on the Humble and Fred show is Bodog. And he said, who do you think, when he was doing the read, he said, who do you think are the favorites, co-favorites to win? And I said, let me guess, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. Yes. Tiger would be a good bet, I said to Fred. I think Tiger would be a good bet if you bet him to make the cut. Because I think 100%. That's the best you can hope for.
Exactly.
Joe LaCava said something in an interview I read today, Tiger's caddy, saying, if he could take a cart, he'd be contending tomorrow.
No, I would believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
But he can't walk anymore. It's too hard. It's too hard on his leg.
But one of the things, just back to Corey Connors for a sec, that he just exuded that calmness.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the NBC talked to Mallory.
I love his wife. His wife's really
and they
cute.
Referenced back to when she was going
freaking out in 2019.
Nuts the first time. And I noted this time she didn't have the big silo cup full of wine.
No. She had her kid. They had their, it's funny watching these kids grow up.
They're all grown up now.
What's that, buddy?
They're all grown up now.
Yeah, with a 3-year-old. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I've watched a little bit of the live from the Masters the last couple of nights, and I just like Paul McGinley, and I like Chambly. And McGinley and Chambly go back and forth very nicely together.
They do.
And there's nobody. I mean, maybe Nance. Rich Lerner is just a fine broadcaster, man. He's so good.
So it's Immelman now is going to be the right-hand man with Nance in the tower now, right?
He's been he's been all this season. He replaced Faldo.
Yeah, and he's been pretty good. I haven't seen a lot of the CBS stuff. I didn't watch any Pebble Beach, it'll be this will be Immelman's first kind of
the big coming up.
So that'll be interesting. But this is a Holy Week in a couple of different ways.
Oh yeah, well, 3 different. Because it's also the beginning of Passover tonight. I know, I know that's the other religion. But Faldo, by the way, speaking of Faldo, apparently he has come out of retirement. He's going to do a couple of tournaments for Sky Sports.
Oh, wow.
This one.
I reached out to his people about coming on this show. So maybe we could tell him we had Mr. Ledbetter. Maybe if Mr. Ledbetter's on the show, maybe Mr. Faldo should. Oh, actually, Sir Nick.
Sir Nick, yeah, that'll be great. That'll be our first Sir on the program. Well, listen, man, really excited that we had him on, and I think people are going to enjoy it. Thanks to our newest sponsor, who is OscarBravo.com. Go and check these golf shirts out, and as Tim said, it's you're going to be the only people that have one of these. They really are something else, and we can't wait to show them off. Hopefully by our next episode, we'll be able to. And by the way, I'm not 100% sure I recorded the video, but I'll see.
Well, it's a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But also brought to you by TaylorMade Golf and the all-new TaylorMade Stealth 2 Fairway Woods. Introducing the all-new Stealth 2 Plus Fairway from TaylorMade. It's more than a golf club. It's like a cheat code for your game. Learn more at TaylorMadeGolf.ca. And Timmy, for the very first time in 224 episodes, we have an actual commercial.
If there's one thing we know golfers want from a driver, it's distance. But there's actually 2 things: distance and forgiveness. That's why TaylorMade designed the all-new Stealth 2 with even more carbon for even more forgiveness.
Wait, did you say forgiveness like far, or forgiveness like forgiveness?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
I'm hearing far.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Exactly. Rory gets it. The all-new TaylorMade Stealth 2. Learn more at TaylorMadeGolf.ca.
There you go. How legitimate is that?
Speaking of evolution.
we had Rory, Mark Halla, and Tiger on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were on our show for sure.
All right. O'ConnorGolf.ca is where you find out more from Tim. Go check him out, read his Substack. And Humble and Fred, just Google us, okay? All right, we'll see you next time.
A band is blowing Dixie, double fall time. You feel alright when you hear